intro before we get started. Asher and Donnie are not here yet.
What's that?
Asher and Donnie are not here yet.
As always, I am at your disposal.
I appreciate it.
Just don't take my book. Orly? No, it's okay. She had looked up and there was a man standing up here putting on a kittle, and she instantly was going to refer to me by something that she would do, and she said, "Oh wait, that's not my husband." I said, "You are correct." Well, they say clothes make the man.
Story. Until she found her father. I think it was Libby. You have to ask her this. Very sweet.
That's when you know that someone is in politics for the right reasons. When they're not so full of themselves that they can't do that.
You have not seen Donna, have you?
Not recently. But who's the person who might know?
We may have to go without her. I'd asked her to send something at the beginning, but she's not here. I will call you guys up. All of the past presidents at one time. I'll hand the first group. There's a listing on each of the electoral. And then he'll do one recitation of Kol Nidre. After he's done, he'll pass it to the next person. Even those who are not carried. If y'all can take your seats, we'll get started in just about 1 minute here. Gemar Chatima Tova. Good Yantiv. As we are preparing to get started today, just a few quick reminders about services. One, if you have cell phones on, please put them on silent or turn them off. God can hear you fine, so don't worry about it. The back corners on each side in the balcony are reserved for those wearing masks and those who are more COVID sensitive and conscious. So if you can please make sure you're wearing a mask if you're in either of these back rows or in the balcony, that would be great. So with that, we'll go ahead and begin. In the chorus of one of her songs, Front Porch, singer-songwriter Joy Williams sings, "If never you find what you're looking for, come on back to the front porch. Say my name through the screen door and come on back to the front porch. Whatever you've done doesn't matter, because darling, we're all a little splintered and battered. But the light is on, what are you waiting for? Come on back to the front porch." The song has been on my pre-Yom Kippur playlist every year since its release about 4 years ago. Each year, as I listen to it, I can't help but thinking how it relates to us tonight as we begin Yom Kippur. I can't help imagine, but if it's God singing these words to us, waiting for us, reminding us, doesn't matter what we've done, doesn't matter how broken we are, whatever we've done, it doesn't matter. God still says, the light is on, what are you waiting for? Come on back to my front porch. If you ever wondered what Yom Kippur is about, if you ever wanted to cut through the liturgy and pomp and circumstance and get to the core of what we're doing these next 25 hours, this is it. Yom Kippur is about God telling us that through all of our wanderings, through all of our mistakes, through all of the pain we've caused and we've suffered in our lives, through all of our brokenness, through everything we go through day in and day out in our lives, God is waiting with the porch light on for us to call out through the screen door and to come home. To a life not left wandering, but one with the direction God has for us. The journey can be hard. For any of us who have ever left home, you know it's not easy to return. You're not the same person as when you left. It's not the same home as when you left. But that's the point. The growth and changes, the splintering and battering you've experienced, and that we all have in our lives, they're all part of the journey. Yet you don't have to do it alone. In fact, you're in a room full of people who feel the same way, are in the same position, who are making the same trek as you are. And that brokenness doesn't mean we're ever less welcome or wanted. As much as it can sometimes seem like Yom Kippur is a holiday about punishment, deep down, it is an invitation to return, to come back to the life God has hoped for us, and that we have wanted and hoped for ourselves. So the question for us over these next 25 hours is, what are you waiting for? Are you ready to come back home to God's front porch? We'll begin our journey home in our machzorim that are in the pews in front of you, page 204. We rise as the ark is opened, page 204.
Orzaru Allah tzadik, uleishre lev simcha. Orzaru Allah tzadik, uleishre lev simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik, uli yishvei lev simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik, uli yishvei lev simcha.
We invite all of our past presidents to come up at this time for Kol Nidre as we prepare for it.
V'shiva shel mahala, v'shiva shel mata, al dat hamakom v'al dat hakahal, anu matirin להתפלל עם הבריינים. V'shiva shel mahala, uv'shiva shel mata, al dat hamakom v'al dat hakahal, anu matirin להתפלל עם הבריינים. V'shiva shel mahala, uv'shiva shel mata, al dat hamakom v'al dat hakahal, anu matirin להתפלל עם הבריינים. Kol Nidre v'yesare v'charame v'koname v'chinuye v'chinuse u'shevuhot dindarna Udehishtabana Udeacharimna Udeacharimna Vedasarna al nafshatana Miyom Kippurim zeh Ad Yom Kippurim haba aleinu letova kulhon icherat navehon Kulhon Yehon Sheran Shvitin Betehelin umvutalin La sheririn Vela kayamin Nidrana la nidre ve'esarana la esare
ושבועתנה לשבועות. Kol Nidre v'yesare v'acharame v'koname v'chinuye v'chinuse ושבועות din darna udehishtabana udeacharimna udeacharimna vedasarna al nafshatana miyom kippurim zeh ad yom kippurim haba aleinu letova kulhon icherat navehon kulhon yehon sheran shvitin betehelin umvutalin la sheririn vela kayamin nidrana la nidre ve'esarana la esare ushvuatana la shevuot. Kol Nidre v'yesare v'acharame v'koname v'chinuye v'chinuse ושבועות din darna udehishtabana udeacharimna udeacharimna vedasarna al nafshatana miyom kippurim zeh ad yom kippurim haba aleinu letova kulhon icherat navehon sheran shvikin shvitin betehelin umvutalin la sheririn vela kayamin nidrana la nidre vesarana la esarhe ushvuatana la shevuot V'nislach l'chol adat b'nei Yisrael v'lager hagar b'tocham ki lo kol ha'am b'hishgaga V'nislach l'chol adat b'nei Yisrael v'lager hagar b'tocham ki lo kol ha'am b'hishgaga V'nislach l'chol adat b'nei Yisrael v'lager hagar b'tocham ki lo kol ha'am b'hishgaga Slach na lavon ha'am hazeh kegodel chastecha chasher nasata le'am hazeh mi'mitzrayim v'yad heina v'sham nehemar Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kiyemanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh
At this time, he just went back, but I'm going to invite the foundation president, Jacob Halpern, to come up to share with us a few words. You may be seated.
I was ahead of my seat. I'm glad you called me. Good evening and Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
When I took on the role of serving as the board president of Temple Bethel Foundation, I did so having already had the pleasure of being a past president of Bethel. These dual roles provide me with a unique view of how these two entities, our synagogue and our foundation, interact. And the closest analogy I can think of is family. While each member of a family has his or her own identity with different focuses, they all join together for the good of the whole. Temple Bethel and the foundation are no different. While they are separate legal entities, they are also a family. They work together to ensure the continued future of Temple Beth-El. And as everyone who has ever met me already knows, I am deeply passionate about the continuity of Temple Beth-El. I take on leadership roles because I believe we must all work together to ensure Temple Beth-El's legacy continues for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, our family. And that legacy depends on the continued support of the foundation. So, you may be asking, what exactly does the foundation do? The foundation provides funding for so many programs that educate, enlighten, and entertain our members and help meet Temple Beth-El's operational costs. To give you some examples of where the foundation money goes, Schulhouse Rock, our religious school education programming, is supported in part by the Heidi and Martin Damsky Jewish Education Programming Fund, Roz and Victor Fagelson Religious School Fund, Lipsit Family Education Fund, Ruth and Joseph Sikora Children's Education Fund, and the Goldie and Zidney Ziff Education Fund. The Reva and Joel Engel Young Adult Engagement Fund helps to defray the salary of Margaret Norman, our Director of Programming and Engagement. Margaret's impact on our programs and events has been monumental. She is an asset to us all, made possible in part by the foundation. Our beautiful building and grounds benefit from the J.B. and Lynette Mazer Temple Beautification Fund, the Alva Shevin Permit Beautification Fund, and the Deferred Maintenance Fund. I could go on, but I think you get the idea. Quite simply, the foundation funds allow for incredible variety of programs that occur every day. The generosity and vision of everyone who begins a fund help ensure the continuation of our synagogue family. Of course, the current market is not making any of this any easier. I keep telling myself I've got to stop looking at my stocks every day. But even with this mashugana market and crazy economy, the foundation is standing next to Temple Beth-El to ensure its continuation. Please consider being a part of the longevity of Temple Beth-El. Every single foundation fund, whether restricted, unrestricted, permanent, or temporary, benefits the continued health of our shul. Whatever your passion at Temple Beth-El, the foundation stands ready and willing to help you create ways to ensure that your vision can preserve for generations to come. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur provide all this time to pause, be with family, take stock of ourselves, recommit ourselves to promises we have made, and open our minds and hearts to new possibilities. Join me in embarking in this new year with your other family, Temple Beth-El and the Temple Beth-El Foundation. My family and I wish each of you a healthy, happy, and prosperous new year. Shana Tova.
Kol hakavod, Jacob, and thank you for everything you do for the foundation, as well as Kathy, if she's here, but all that she does for our foundation and for our synagogue as well. And thank you for being a part of it. As we prepare to go into the Ma'ariv portion of our service and the main part of our service, I want to share a story by Menachem Kaiser, a writer who lives in Brooklyn, New York, and whose memoir recently won the Sammy Rohr Prize for Jewish Literature. He writes that a few years ago, I was stood up on a date. Depressed, I wandered the crowded streets until I found myself walking into a storefront psychic. I don't believe in these things, but neither am I antagonistic. I sat on the sofa and she told me about myself, but it was mostly wrong. She could see I was unimpressed. Listen, she said, this doesn't work if you're not open to it. I shrugged. I'd guess, she said, you have a hard time letting yourself be taught. I said that was probably true. She asked if I had ever had a mentor. I said no, but not for lack of trying. I told her about the rabbi who I thought was so brilliant, but who was, on the inside, morally repugnant. The professor in graduate school, who was too insecure to be anything but congenial. The boss, the cousin, the friend, they've all let me down, I said. Strictly speaking, the psychic said, I don't give advice. I see what I see, and all I'll say to you is that all of them, everyone, the rabbi, the professor, the boss, the cousin, the friend, they are your story. as for that matter, am I. So often we don't think about how our stories are intertwined with each other. So on this Yom Kippur, as we're continuing the Mariv service, may we think about our intertwining stories and the stories that help make us who we are. At this time, I invite us to rise for the Baruch Hu, page 207.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach
Baruch Adonai Hamevorach Leolam Va'ed.
You may be seated. We continue 3 lines from the top, page 207.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim b'chokma potech sharim Umavir yom umevi laila umavdil ben yom uven laila Adonai tzavaot shemo ehel chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed Baruch ata Adonai Hama'ariv aravim.
Page 208.
Avat olam beit Yisrael Ki hem chayeinu v'yorach yameinu uvahem nege yomam v'layla v'avatcha atasir mimenu li'olamim Baruch ata Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Vaed V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha V'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha U'v'chol meyotecha V'hayu hadvarim ha'ele Asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam liot al yadecha V'hayu latotafot bein heinecha Uchtavtam amzuzot beitecha Uvisharecha למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Continue in the middle, at the red arrow, page 210.
ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ופני ישראל לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלוהים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקי הים לפני משה, זה אלי אנו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Page 211.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום עמידנו מלכנו להחשים ובזכותנו שלומך ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ברוך אתה אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
We rise as we turn to page 212 in preparation for the Amidah.
יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה ביעמד יברח ידונתה וימליך מלכותה בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בגלה בזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם עולמי עמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו amen.
We remain standing for the Amidah, which is recited privately as it is in the evening, beginning on page 213 and going through page 221. Please feel free to use the Hebrew, the English, or add your own personal prayers during this time. If you're still praying, please take your time and finish at your own pace. Our service continues on page 223 with Ya'aleh, a piyut or liturgical poem, which introduces the special section for the evening service. It is an anonymous poem which describes Yom Kippur as a progression from Kol Nidre tonight to Ne'ilah, the end of tomorrow night. Each verse includes Ya'aleh, rise in the evening, Yavo, arrive in the morning, and Yera'eh, appear at the end of the day. The author expresses the anxiety at the beginning of this day of self-examination with its pleas for forgiveness, as well as the hope for purification at the fast completion. The poem is a reverse acrostic at the first letter of the middle word in each clause. It is as if, throughout the day, we move back in our recollections, allowing the events of the year to pass before our mind's eye. This day is set aside for introspection. At different hours and different light, we may see different aspects of our lives. And as we move inward, we can be in touch with the ways our lives might be renewed until we arrive at Aleph, the point of origin. We rise as the ark is open for Ya'aleh, page 223.
Ya'aleh tachnuneinu me'erev v'yavo shavateinu mi-boker Yadadadai ve'erah rinuneinu adarev Ya'aleh koleinu me'erev v'yavod tzidkateinu mi-boker Yadadadai ve'erah pinyoneinu adarev Ya'aleh inuyenu me'erev v'yavo slichatenu mi-boker Yadadadai ve'erah na'akatenu adarev Ya'aleh minusenu me'erev v'yavo lema'ano mi-boker Yadadadai ve'erah kipurenu adarev Ya'aleh yishenu me'erev v'yavo tohorenu mi-boker Yadadadai ve'erah chinunenu adarev Ya'aleh zichronenu me'erev v'yavo vi'udenu mi-boker Yadadadai ve'erah hadratenu adarev Ya'aleh dofkenu me'erev v'yavo gilenu mi-boker Yadadadai ve'erah bakashatenu adarev Ya'aleh enkatenu me'erev v'yavo elecha mi-boker Yadadadai ve'erah eleinu adarev Yadadadai Yadadadadai Yadadadadai Yai, nai, 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 nai.
You may be seated as the ark is closed. We'll continue page 224.
Shomei atefila adecha kol basar yavo kol basar lishtachavod lefanecha Adonai yavo v'yishtachavu lefanecha Adonai v'kabdu lishmecha lechun ranana Adonai nari elatzor yishenu nekadma fana betoda bizmerot nari alo Asher lo hayam v'hu asahu v'yapeshet yadav yatzaru Asher b'yado nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol basar ish.
Continue page 225.
Haneshama lach v'haguf po'alach husa al malach Hanesham halach v'haguf shelach Adonai aseh leman shemecha Ahatanu al shimcha Adonai aseh leman shemecha Ba'avur kevod shimcha ki el Chanun v'rachum shemecha Hanesham halach v'haguf po'alach Husa halamalach Hanesham halach v'haguf shelach Adonai aseh leman shemecha Lama'an shimcha Adonai salachta la'avonenu kiravu Darkecha Eloheinu leharicha pecha Laharaim v'latovim v'hitihilatecha Lemancha Eloheinu aseh v'lo lanu Rei amidateinu dalim v'reikim Ta'ale arucha ha'el nidaf Tinachem alafar v'hefer Tahashlicha ta'einu v'tachom b'maasecha Tereki ein ish aseh imanu tzedakah.
Page 226.
El erecha pa'ayim ata uval harachamim Nikreta v'derech teshuva horeta Gdulat rachamecha v'chasadecha tizkor hayom uv'kol yom lezera yedidecha Tefen eleinu b'rachamecha ki atahu ba'al harachamim Betachon uv'tfila panecha nekadehem Gehodata le'anav mikedem Mecharon abcha shuv kamo b'toratcha katuv Uvetzer knafecha v'necheseh v'nit lo naham Kayom v'yered Adonai be'anan Ta'avor al pesha v'timche asham Kayom v'yityatzeh v'mosham Ta'azin shavatenu v'takshiv menu me'amar Kiyom v'yikra b'shem Adonai V'yavor Adonai apana v'yikra Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'Chanun Erech apayim v'rav chesed v'yemet Notzer chesed la'alafim Nosei avon v'fesha v'chata v'nakeh. Salachta la'avonenu, ulchatatenu unchaltanu. Salach lanu avinu, ki chatanu, mechal lanu makenu, ki fashanu, ki ata Adonai, tov v'salach, v'rav chesed, lechol korecha.
As we continue on page 227 with Kihine Kachomer, the poem we're about to recite imagines God as an artisan who models and shapes us along the way. And Dr. David Elcott, a teacher, author, father, grandfather, and ceramicist, teaches that in the studio of his teacher, Kashio, a Japanese national treasure, was a ledge that circled the room with ceramic pieces, some millennia old. He had learned from these masters, his teachers. Being part of a tradition, an inheritance from centuries past, is at the core of great ceramic work. This is similar to the rabbinic traditions of engaging in Jewish conversations over time. It is a cardinal rule in rabbinic thought that one cites the learning gained from one's teachers, b'shem omro, in the name of the one who taught it to you. Kashio taught core life principles. Ceramics are forever, for even broken shards, once fired at 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit, will always remain. Create your pieces as if they and you are here for eternity. One time, when Dr. Elcott went to smooth out a vessel, his teacher stopped him and said, "No, leave the imprints of your fingers on the bowl. Fingerprints show that you existed." Being a potter, he taught, is to be vulnerable. Clay may collapse as you work it. The bowl may crack when drying, explode in the kiln, fall off the shelf. A potter must accept failure, to be broken, and celebrate the process even more than the product. The adventure of living is living, not any particular outcome. Keep that in mind as we continue with Kihine Kachomer. We'll recite the first and then the last two verses, and then we'll read responsively the paragraphs in the English on page 227.
Ki hine kachomer biyad hayotzer birtzoto marchiv uvirtzoto mekatzer kehen anachnu biyadcha chesed notzer labrita beit v'yal tefen layetzer.
We'll read responsively in the English. As clay in the hand of the potter who thickens or thins it at will, so are we in your hand, guardian of love. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser.
As stone in the hand of the mason who preserves or breaks it at will, so are we in your hand, God of life and death. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser.
As iron in the hand of the blacksmith who forges or withdraws it at will, so are we in your hand, supporter of the poor. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser.
As the helm in the hand of the sailor who holds the course or abandons it at will, so are we in your hand, good and favoring God. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser.
As glass in the hand of the glazier who shapes or melts it at will, so are we in your hand, pardoner of sin and transgression. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser.
As cloth in the hand of the draper who drapes or twists it at will, so are we in your hand, righteous God. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser.
As silver in the hand of the smelter who alloys it or refines it at will, so are we in your hand, healer of wounds. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser. We continue at the bottom, 227.
Ki hine kairiya biyad harokem birtzoto miyaser uvirtzoto miyakem כן אנחנו בידך אלקנו ונוקם, לברית הבית ויעל תפן ליצר, כי הנה ככסף ביד הצורף, ברצותו משגשג וברצותו מצרף. כן אנחנו בידך ממציא למזור טרף, לברית הבית ויעל תפן ליצר.
We continue, page 229.
אל מלך יושב על כיסא רחמים, מתנהג בחסידות, מוחל עוונות עמו, מעביר ראשון, מרבה מחילה ולחטאים, וסליחה ולפושעים, לעושה צדקות עם כל בשר רוח, ולא קראתם תגמול. אל הורית לנו למר 13, זכר לנו היום ברית 13, כמו שהדעת לעניו מקדם, כמו שכתוב. וירד אדוני בענן, ויצב עמו שם, ויקרא בשם אדוני. ויעבור אדוני על פניו ויקרא, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה. סלחת לעווננו ולחטאתנו ונחלתנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו, מחל לנו מלכנו כי פשענו, כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח ורב חסד לכל קוראיך.
We'll continue responsively, page 230 in the English.
To you we pray, above us all, beyond all time and space. Understand us, mortal beings, poor in spirit, weak of flesh. For you turn toward the humble, the broken, the weak. Forgive us on this special day. Surely you will do so tomorrow.
My soul yearns for you, though I am afraid of your judgment. Our ritual is imperfect. We can no longer follow the prescribed form, yet we depend on you. Turn to us as if we were high priests standing before your ark. Surely you will do so tomorrow.
My heart is caught in the web it has spun, and I am conscious of how short my life is. We depart like dew that may shine for a morning. Not saved by its lowly state, it quickly fades. On this day, when we are summoned before the judge of all, turn to us your honor's sake. Allow us to walk in the land of the living. Forgive the sins of your people. Surely you will do so tomorrow.
My sovereign, redeem the children of Jacob and accept our fasting from one evening to the next. Rain down on us the redemption we have prayed for and quench our thirst. Tzur Yisrael, stronghold of Israel, bathe me in your purifying waters and purify me as I sing to you. Surely this is our God. Surely you will do so tomorrow.
Wipe away my sins as I call to you, filled with awe in your holy sanctuary. Form me anew, granting me a heart freshly born, as the righteous teacher foretold in your holy law regarding this special day. Surely you will do so tomorrow.
We continue, page 232.
אל מלך יושב על כיסא רחמים, מתנהג בחסידות, מוחל עוונות עמו, מעביר ראשון, מרבה מחילה ולחטאים, וסליחה לפושעים, עושה צדקות עם כל בשר רוח, ולא קראתם תגמול. אל הורית לנו למר 13, וחלנו היום ברית 13, כמו שהודעת לעניו מקדם, כמו שכתוב. וירד אדוני בענן, ויתייצב עמו שם, ויקרא בשם אדוני. ויעבור אדוני על פניו ויקרא, אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה. סלחת לעווננו ולחטאתנו ונחלתנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו, מחל לנו מלכנו כי פשענו, כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח ורב חסד לכל קוראיך. האזין אדוני תפילתנו, קשיב בכל תחנונותינו. סלח נא לעוון העם הזה כגודל חסדך, כאשר נשאת לעם הזה ממצרים ביד הנה, ושם נאמר, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך. כפר חטאינו ביום הזה וטהרנו כמה שכתוב, כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם וטהר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני אדוני תטהרו. הביאנו אל הר קודשך ושמחנו בבית תפילתך כמה שכתוב, כי ביתי בית תפילה ויקרא לכל העמים.
We rise as the ark is opened, second paragraph, page 233.
Shema, Shema, Kolenu. Shema, Shema, Kolenu. Shema, Shema, Kolenu. Shema, 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 Kolenu. Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, chuz vrachem aleinu. V'kabel brachamim uvratzon et tefilateinu. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva, Chadesh, 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 Yameinu, Kekedem. Shema, Shema, Kolenu. Shema, Shema, Kolenu. Shema, Shema, Kolenu. Shema, 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 Kolenu. Al tashlichenu, al Al tashlichenu milfanecha. Al tashlichenu milfanecha veruach kodshecha al tikach mimenu. Al tashlichenu, al tashlichenu, li'ed zikna. Al tashlichenu, li'ed zikna, kichlot kochenu. Al tazvenu. Shema, Shema, Koleinu. Shema, Shema, Koleinu. Shema, Shema, Koleinu. Shema, 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 Koleinu. Al ta'azvehenu, Ranai Eloheinu, al tirchak mimenu, azeimanu ot l'tova v'yiru, sonenu v'yevoshu kiat Hanai, azartanu v'nichantanu, amirenu hazinu Ranai b'nei hakikeinu, yil ratzoi v'gan livicha, Ranai tzvi v'goali, l'cha Adonai,
The ark is closed. You may be seated. As we continue, page 234.
Eloheinu v'lehavotenu, selach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu, ki anu ahamecha v'yata Eloheinu, anu vanecha v'yata avinu, anu avadecha v'yata adonenu, anu kahalecha v'yata chelkeinu, anu nachlatecha v'yata goralenu, anu tzonecha v'yata roenu, anu karmecha v'yata notrenu, anu fulatecha v'yata yotzreinu, anu rayatecha v'yata dodenu, anu segulatecha v'yata krovenu, anu ahamecha v'yata malkeinu, anu ma'amirecha v'yata mamhireinu, anu azefanim v'yata rachum v'chanun, anu kashe oref v'yata erech apayim, anu male avon v'yata male rachamim, anu yame ketzel over v'yata hu ushnotecha lo yitamu.
We are about to begin one of the key elements of the Yom Kippur liturgy, the viduri, or confessional. We will repeat this confessional 5 times throughout, with this being the first of the 5. During the viduri, there are 2 separate confessions, Ashamnu and Al-Chet. Before we continue with the viduri, one of my teachers, Rabbi Jacob Blumenthal, now the CEO of the Rabbinical Assembly and United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, once shared a practice he did with his former synagogue of sharing his own rabbinic viduri, his confession of his sins as a rabbi towards his congregation. Inspired by his list, I have borrowed some items, edited some, and added a few of my own. So before we begin our communal confessional, even though I may have only been here a few months. As your rabbi, I would like to ask your forgiveness for any wrongdoing I have done over these last couple months, and hope that this list may, in the coming year, if not get shorter, at least not get longer. For the times I wasn't there when you needed me, and for the times I was there but not truly present. For the times I should have called to check on you, and for the times I couldn't call because I couldn't share your burden. For the times when I may have forgotten your name, and for the times when I forgot to introduce you to others. For the times when my words brought pain instead of comfort, and for the times when my words embarrassed you. For the times when I assumed you knew something that you didn't know, and for the times when I assumed you didn't know something you knew. For the times when I acted too quickly, and for the times when I acted too slowly. For the times when I spoke in anger, and for the times when I acted with impatience. For the times when I spoke instead of listening, for the times I didn't have the words that you needed to hear. For the times I did not speak out when I disagreed, and for the times I consented when I should have protested. For the times I got involved when I should not have, and for the times I did not get involved when I should have. For the times I followed instead of leading, and for the times I may have led you astray. For the times I tried to be your friend when you needed a rabbi, and for the times I tried to be a rabbi when you needed a friend. For the really big mistakes, and for the small transgressions. For all these sins, and for the others I may have committed against you intentionally or unintentionally. Salach li, mechal li, kaper li. I ask each and every one of you for your pardon and forgiveness. We'll continue with our communal confessional, bottom of page 234.
Eloheinu v'le'avoteinu v'imotenu, tavo lefanecha tefillatenu, v'al titala midchinatenu, she'ena nachnu azefanim ukeshe oref, lomar lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu, ve'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, tzadikim anachnu v'lo chatanu, ahaval anachnu, avotenu v'imotenu chatanu.
We rise, page 235.
Ay, 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 Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu Dofi, He'evinu, Vehirshanu, Zahadnu, Chamasnu, Tafalnu Shaker. Ay, 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 Yatsnura, Kizavnu, Latsnu, Marahadnu, Niyatsnu, Sararnu, Avinu, Pashanu, Tsaranu, Kishinu Oref. Ay, 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 Rashanu, Shichatnu, Tiavnu, Tainu, Titanu. Saharnu mimitzvotecha, umimishpatecha hatovim, v'lo shavalanu. Ahata tzadika kol habalenu, ki emet asihita, v'anachnu hirshanu.
Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, one of the great philosophers of the 20th century, used to keep a diary. And in this entry, he had just heard a lecture at the convention, at the Rabbinical Assembly Convention, on the topic of sin. And this is his comment in what he wrote. The speaker made a point of retaining the fear concept of God. He repeated almost verbatim the statements I have so often come across by Christian preachers protesting against the tendency to identify God with love and urging that we should behold in the consequences of sin the punitive aspects of God's dealings. To me, the very idea of a punishing God is perfectly abhorrent. All punishment is nothing but revenge, and therefore belongs to the same class of evils as sin, suffering, cruelty, disease, and death. I might as well think of God as deliberately sinning or committing cruelty as to attribute to him the will to punish. God is not concerned in seeing to it that the consequences of sin shall be suffering. The consequences of sin are part of the sin which caused them, and like the sin itself, possible in the universe because the domain of chance and accident still occupies a tremendous part of that universe and has not yet come under the dominion of God, who is synonymous with whatever there is of order, purpose, intelligence, and love in the universe. As we continue with the Alchet, here beginning on page 237, perhaps we can focus more on our capacity to change and our capacity to improve our behavior rather than focusing on the fear of punishment, which might be less productive. We'll begin a little bit in the Hebrew and then continue responsively in the English with Vial Kulam. Page 237.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באונס וברצון, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בבלי דעת, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בביטוי שפתיים.
We'll read responsively in the English. We have sinned against you unwillingly and willingly.
And we have sinned against you through hardening our hearts.
We have sinned against you thoughtlessly.
And we have sinned against you in idle chatter.
We have sinned against you through sexual immorality.
And we have sinned against you openly and in private.
We have sinned against you knowingly and deceitfully.
And we have sinned against you by the way we talk.
We have sinned against you by defrauding others.
And we have sinned against you in our innermost thoughts.
We have sinned against you through forbidden trysts.
And we have sinned against you through empty confession.
We have sinned against you by scorning parents and teachers.
And we have sinned against you purposely and by mistake.
We have sinned against you by resorting to violence.
And we have sinned against you by public desecration of your name.
We have sinned against you through foul speech.
And we have sinned against you through foolish talk.
We have sinned against you through pursuing the impulse to evil.
And we have sinned against you wittingly and unwittingly.
For all these sins, forgiving God, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
V'al kulam elo aslichot, salach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu.
We have sinned against you through denial and deceit.
And we have sinned against you by taking bribes.
We have sinned against you by clever cynicism.
And we have sinned against you by speaking ill of others.
We have sinned against you by the way we do business.
And we have sinned against you in our eating and drinking.
We have sinned against you by greed and oppressive interest.
And we have sinned against you through arrogance.
We have sinned against you in everyday conversation.
And we have sinned against you through conspiratorial glances.
We have sinned against you through condescension.
And we have sinned against you through stubbornness.
For all these sins, forgiving God, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
V'al kulam elo aslichot, salach lanu, mechal lanu, kaper lanu.
We have sinned against you by throwing off all restraint.
We have sinned against you by rashly judging others.
We have sinned against you by plotting against others.
And we have sinned against you through selfishness.
We have sinned against you through superficiality.
And we have sinned against you through stubbornness.
We have sinned against you by rushing to do evil.
We have sinned against you through gossip.
We have sinned against you through empty promises.
And we have sinned against you through baseless hatred.
We have sinned against you by betraying trust.
And we have sinned against you by succumbing to confusion.
For all these sins, forgiving God, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
V'al kulam elo aslichot salach lanu mechal lanu kaper lanu.
You may be seated. We'll continue page 240.
Mishehana Sarai Meinu V'ziknata Huyanenu Mishehana L'Avraham Avinu Bahar Moriah Huyanenu Mishehana L'Yitzchak Benam Keshenekad Al Gave Hamizbeach Uyanenu Misheana L'Rivka Beher Yonah Uyanenu Misheana L'Yakov Bevetel Uyanenu Misheana L'Leah B'Onya Uyanenu Misheana L'Rachel B'Yitzvona Uyanenu Misheana L'Yosef B'Veit HaSurim Uyanenu Misheana Lam Yalot Ha'ivriot Al Ha'ovnaim Uyanenu Misheana L'Yochevet Al Sfat HaYor Uyanenu Misheana L'Avatenu Ulimotenu Al Yamsuf Uyanenu Misheana L'Moshe B'Chorev Uyanenu Misheana L'Miriam B'Veira Uyanenu Misheana L'Aharon B'Machta Uyanenu Misheana L'Pinchas B'Kumo Mitoch Ha'ida Uyanenu Misheana Livnot Slovcha Ba'omdan Petach Ohel Moed Uyanenu Misheana L'chol hatzadikim v'hatzadikot, v'hachazidim v'hachasidot, v'hatmimim v'hatmimot, v'haisharim v'haisharot, v'harachamanim v'harachamaniyot, hu ya'anenu.
We rise as the ark is opened for Avinu Malkeinu, page 243.
Avinu Malkeinu chatanu lefanecha, Avinu Malkeinu ein lanu melech ela ata, Avinu Malkeinu aseh imanu leman shemecha, Avinu Malkeinu chadesh aleinu shana tova. Avinu Malkeinu.
Continue responsively in the English. Avinu Malkeinu, we have sinned in your presence.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have no sovereign but you.
Avinu Malkeinu, act toward us kindly in accord with your name.
Avinu Malkeinu, make this a good new year for us.
Avinu Malkeinu, annul every harsh decree against us.
Avinu Malkeinu, nullify the designs of our foes.
Avinu Malkeinu, frustrate the plottings of our enemies.
Avinu Malkeinu, rid us of every oppressor and adversary.
Avinu Malkeinu, rid your covenanted people of disease, war, hunger, captivity, and destruction.
Avinu Malkeinu, forgive and pardon all our sins.
Avinu Malkeinu, do not look toward our sins and transgressions, blot them out.
Avinu Malkeinu, return us to your presence fully penitent.
Avinu Malkeinu, send complete healing to the sick among your people.
Avinu Malkeinu, remember us favorably.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us for good in the book of life.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of redemption.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of sustenance.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of merit.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of forgiveness. Continue in the Hebrew in the middle of page, on the right-hand side at the arrow in the middle of page 243.
Avinu Malkeinu, hachazirenu b'tshuvah shlema lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, achazirenu b'tshuvah shlema lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, shlach refuah shlema lecholei amecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, shlach refuah shlema lecholei amecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, zochrenu b'zichron tov lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, zochrenu b'zikaron tov lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer chayim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, kodvenu b'sefer chaim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer gula vishua.
Avinu Malkeinu, kodvenu b'sefer gula vishua.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer parnasa v'chalkala.
Avinu Malkeinu, kodvenu b'sefer parnasa v'chalkala.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer zichuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu, kodvenu b'sefer zichuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer slicha umchila.
Avinu Malkeinu, kodvenu b'sefer slicha u'mechila.
Avinu
We'll continue back in the English. Avinu Malkeinu, cause our salvation to flourish soon.
Avinu Malkeinu, cause your people Israel to be exalted.
Avinu Malkeinu, raise up your anointed with strength.
Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice, be kind, sympathize with us.
Avinu Malkeinu, accept our prayer willingly and lovingly.
Avinu Malkeinu, do not turn us away empty-handed.
Avinu Malkeinu, remember that we are but dust.
Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion for us, our infants, and our children.
Avinu Malkeinu, do this for the sake of those who were martyred for your holy name.
Avinu Malkeinu, do this for the sake of those who were slaughtered for their exclusive devotion to you.
Avinu Malkeinu, do this for the sake of those who went through fire and water to sanctify your holy name.
Avinu Malkeinu, do this for your sake, if not for ours.
Avinu
Avinu Malkeinu, aseh leman ba'e shuvamayim al kiddush shemecha. Avinu Malkeinu, aseh leman chaim lo lemanenu. Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu v'hanenu. Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu v'hanenu, ki ein banu mahasim. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu v'hanenu. Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu v'hanenu, ki ein banu mahasim. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu.
You may be seated as the ark is closed. We'll continue with Kaddish Shalem, page 245.
Yitzgadal v'yitkahada shemei rabba.
Amen.
Bi'alma divrach chirute v'yamlich malchute b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei decho bet Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv v'yimeru. Amen. Yehi shmeira b'mevorach le'olam ol almei almahaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekun deshaprichu li'ela mikol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran dialma v'yimeru. Amen. Titkabal saloton uvauton decho Yisrael kadam avohon divish mahaya v'yimeru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemahaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen. Ose shalom b'himromav Hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yal kol yoshvei tevel v'yimeru. Amen.
Good Yontiv. If you read recent research or follow the news on a regular occasion, it'd be very easy to conclude the world is falling apart around us. Over the last couple of years, particularly with the COVID pandemic, but with other global and domestic issues thrown in, the level of satisfaction people around the globe have with their lives has plummeted. Mental health issues, addiction rates, violent crime rates all soared throughout the last few years as people struggled through social isolation, economic anxiety, the loss of loved ones, changes in work and family routines, and just plain anger at life and the world around us. Should briefly mention, however, that several of those numbers have become raised somewhat as people have been able to resume a semblance of their previous lives. Nonetheless, there's still a war continuing in Ukraine, outbreaks of missile attacks against our Jewish homeland in Israel, threats from China and Iran, the overturn of Roe, high inflation rates leading to economic struggles, worry about climate change and its effects, including a devastating hurricane last week in Florida and South Carolina, distrust of government and institutions. I'm sure I could go on and on and on, and I'm missing numerous high-profile issues that are causing anxiety in large chunks of the population, even if you yourself might not be feeling anxiety about any of those particular issues. With all those things I mentioned and all the things I didn't, it's easy to look at the world and see it burning down around us. At the same time, all those things are going on. Soon after, my family and I moved here in June, but before I officially started working here at Temple Beth El, we had the pleasure of taking both a weekend trip to Mentone, as well as some day trips to the Botanical Gardens, the zoo, and Red Mountain Park. In doing so, we were blown away by the beauty present here in Alabama. The tree-lined mountains, the sunsets, the waterfalls in Mentone, the array of colors, flowers, and fruits at the gardens, the majesty, variety, and the personality of the animals, including an orangutan that spent the entire time with a bucket on his head. The connection to nature and views you get from the parks. Being in those spaces, you don't feel or see at all the problems and concerns of the world. You just appreciate the world we have. This dichotomy made me think of a profound thought which Rabbi Shai Held, the head of the Hadar Institute in New York, shared a few years ago about the difference between the prophets of the Bible and the rabbis of our tradition. Virtually each of the prophets, he taught, saw the world as God wanted it to be. They saw a world that was full of corruption, mistreatment of others, and perversion of ritual. They saw society collapsing, falling prey to the very human feelings of greed and selfishness rather than following God's commandments. The prophets saw the pain, the suffering, the hatred people inflicted on each other. Each of the prophets of our Bible condemned their society and demanded the people change and fix what was broken to get back into the world God envisioned. The rabbis, in Rabbi Held's view, took a different tact. They saw and accepted the world as it was. They knew it was broken. They knew people were inclined toward their own self-interests. They knew it was not falling in line with God's vision for what the world should look like. But rather than condemning the world, they sought to fix it. Little by little, piece by piece, mitzvah by mitzvah. They provided a roadmap for how we can live in a broken world and seek to heal it. The rabbis did not broadly condemn the world that they lived in. They accepted its brokenness and advocated that it was our responsibility to play a role in its repair. We very much live in a world that takes a binary either-or approach. Either you're a member of my social group or you're not. Either you're a conservative or you're a liberal. Either you're happy or you're sad. Either you're beautiful or you're ugly. Either you're right or you're wrong. Either you're this or you're that. Even right now, I'm guessing some of you are listening to me and trying to decide if I'm incredibly wise or an incredible fool. Maybe you're deciding if you're a prophet or if you're a rabbi. If you think the world is burning around us, or if it's beautiful the way it is. This tendency to categorize the world around us is an important human evolutionary trait. Our senses at every moment absorb a vast amount of information. Our brains necessarily seek out patterns and organization to determine what's important and what's not, what we need to pay attention to and what we can ignore, because otherwise we would be constantly overwhelmed with sensory data. We therefore learn to categorize and put everything into mental boxes to help us sort and understand the world in which we live. While this is a necessary biological trait, the problem is very rarely is anything in this world ever so easily classified. We are often so busy sorting and categorizing our world into neat little boxes that we miss the subtleties and complexities that make us human. When we exclude some people because they don't seem like people who we'd want in our group, we may not realize how much they may contribute to our circle. We might classify someone as conservative because of their economic views, but not realize how liberal they might be on social issues, or vice versa. You might not feel happy or sad in a particular moment. You might be beautiful to one person and not attractive to another. The world is so much more complicated than our either-or dynamic allows. A classic midrash, a classic rabbinical interpretation of the Torah, reinforces this idea. When we first meet Abraham in the Torah, at the time called Avram, we know little to nothing about him before God tells him to go forth from his native land to a land that God promises God will show him. The rabbis of our tradition ask, what was it about Avram that God chose him? What made him so special? In trying to answer those questions, Rabbi Yitzchak, for one, tells a parable which compares Avram to a person who is walking down the street when he sees a palace doleket, in flames. He looks around and says, "Is it possible there's no owner for this palace who cares about it?" It is then that a man peeks out from the top window of the palace and says, "I am the owner." Similarly, according to Rabbi Yitzchak, Avram looked around the world and saw the pain, the violence, the abuse, the destruction, the suffering. He saw a world going up in flames and said, "Is it possible that there's no owner for this world, no one who cares about it?" It was at that moment, when Avram reasoned that some being must be involved in the world, that God first spoke to him and said, "I am the owner of this world," and then commanded Avram to go and become God's partner in repairing it. In this interpretation, God chose Avram from all the people in the world to enter into a relationship, because Avram was the first one who recognized that the world was on fire and couldn't imagine that no one would care. There had to be someone, something, some owner who cared what happened to it. God, sensing Avram's own distress and concern for the world, knew that someone who is as worried about the world as God is would make the perfect partner to bring God's will into that world. The world is on fire, we are told, and as descendants of Avram, we are responsible for putting out the flames. The entire interpretation of this story, though, hinges on the translation of one word, doleket, which describes the palace. Many commentators explain that the world means to be in flames, as I explained, as the word comes from the same root as lahadlik, as we might be familiar with lahadlik ner shel Shabbat, for example, which the conclusion of the blessing we say Friday nights, which translates as to light the Shabbat candle. Yet several commentators, including the great 11th century French commentator Rashi, understand doleket differently. They translate doleket as full of light. What the man in Rabbi Yitzchak's parable sees is not a palace in flames, but a palace of bright, shining light. Changing the translation of this word changes the entire tone of the Midrash. It's not a world that is falling apart, but rather a world that is so beautiful, so amazing, so gorgeous, that it is unfathomable that it is here and no one is looking after it. Avram, then, is the first to see, recognize, and appreciate the absolute exquisiteness and majesty of the world. And God must be responsible for creating it and caring for it. As I've said, the natural tendency is for us to take an either-or approach to the Midrash, to believe that it describes two competing interpretations on how we view the world. One way is to look around and see how terrible the world is, how much pain and suffering people endure, how we're destroying the environment, how much hatred there is, and conclude the world is falling apart and on fire. The other way is to look at all the beauty in the world, the kind acts that people do to help others, how people are constantly innovating new ideas, to feel the love between friends and family, and conclude the world is aglow, shining bright. The truth is, we don't need to pick one interpretation or the other. It is possible for two contradictory things to exist simultaneously. A piece of wisdom from Reb Simcha Bunim, a late 18th and early 19th century Hasidic Rebbe, tells how a person should carry two pieces of paper in their pocket at all times. One which says, "I am but dust and ashes." The other which says, "For me, the world was created." Both statements are simultaneously true. We are but mortals who will return to the dust from which we were created. Yet we are also so valuable in God's sight that God created a place in this world just for us and couldn't imagine a world in which each of us was not in it. The same is true for how we look at the world. We can look at the world around us going up in flames, but that doesn't mean it isn't also beautiful and majestic. We can condemn wherever we see pain, destruction, and suffering, while also seeing and appreciating the light, the beauty, the kindness, the creativity that exists in our world. We can listen to someone with whom we disagree and realize there's truth in their statement, even if we come to different conclusions. We can allow ourselves to experience the full range of human emotions, not limiting ourselves to happy or sad. We can accept we might disagree with someone on some issues and not on others. And even more importantly, we can disagree with someone and still love, care, and respect them. We can be both rabbis and prophets, accepting the world around us while condemning where we see it running against God's vision for us. Throughout Yom Kippur, we confess and ask forgiveness for a wide range of transgressions. As we join together tonight, I wonder if we can add to those lists the times we did not see both sides of the story, when we fell prey to either or thinking. Not only is our world so much more complex than that approach can manage, but a non-binary approach can also allow us to see the world as it is. To, like Avram, appreciate the beauty that is around us while fighting against the pain that surrounds us. And may our thoughts and our worldview be open to both in the coming year, and may we be grateful for this amazing world in which we live while working to put out the fires we see in it, making it a better place for all of us. Gemar Chatima Tova. At this time, I invite you to rise for Aleinu, page 246.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, latet gedula le'yotzev reshit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo samochel kenu kahem, v'gohor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu משתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ ומושב עיקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו בגובהי מרומים Hu Eloheinu enod, emet malkeinu efezul hato, kakatuv betorato, v'yadat hayom, v'hashevota el levavecha. Ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim, b'shamayim imal, v'al haaretz mitachat eino. כי המלכות שלך היא ולמד עד תמלוך בכבוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד. ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. We'll continue with Psalm 27, page 248. You may be seated.
David Anayuri Vishimi mi ira Aranai Ma'oz Chayai Mimi Efchad. Luleihem anti lerot betuv Adonai be'eretz chayim kavel Adonai chazak v'emetz libecha v'kavel Adonai.
At this time, we take a moment to remember all those who, though they no longer walk this earth, remain alive in our hearts and minds. So we recognize that this evening we begin the yurtzites of Rosa Banks, Herbert Birnbaum, Sadie Blotner, Samuel Lewis Diamond, Ellie Estreicher, Max Goldstein, Isidore Goldstein, Frida Margaret Goldstein, Chaim Hirsch, Rivka Hirsch, Rita Marcus, Jenny Mayer, Gertrude Solomon, Peter Weinrib, Bella Weinstein, Molly Weinstein, and Sarah Weinstein. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing. So we invite all those in mourning and those observing yurtzites to please rise and join in the Mourner's Kaddish, page 247. Yid Gadal v'Yid Kadash Shamei Rabbah B'arma Divra Chirutei v'Yamlich Malchutei B'chayechon v'Yomechon v'Chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael Ba'agala v'Izman Kariv v'Imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'olam Elamei Almaya Yitbarach v'Yishtabach v'Yitpa'ar v'Yitramam v'Yitnaseh v'Yitadar v'Yitaleh v'Yitalal Shmei Dekudsha B'rechu Le'ela Le'ela Mikol Birchata v'Shirata Tushbechata v'Nechamata Damiran Be'alma v'Imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya v'Chaim Aleinu v'Al Kol Yisrael v'Imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimromav Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu v'Al Kol Yisrael v'Al Kol Yoshvei Tevel v'Imru Amen. Before we conclude our service, just want to do a couple very, very brief announcements. First, I want to say thank you all for coming. It's lovely to see so many of y'all here. For those joining virtually, good Yantiv, glad you're joining us virtually. We miss you, but we're glad you're joining us. I want to say Kol HaKavod to Josh Ivker for leading us beautifully in our service this evening. So if you see him afterwards, tell him how great of a job he did because it was gorgeous. So Kol HaKavod to you. And Kol HaKavod to everybody who participated in our service. Tomorrow morning we'll begin at 8:30 here in the sanctuary for Yom Kippur services in the morning. We're planning for around 10 o'clock, we'll be around the Torah service. That's also when all of our breakout sessions are happening. So there will be a tot service for those in second grade and below downstairs in the kids zone. There'll be a family service in the chapel. There'll be a teen service in the USY lounge. I'll be leading a study session in the conference room. It'll be bustling, but it'll be great. And we'll have Torah service going on in here. Approximately 10:45 is when we're estimating Yisker tomorrow. So make sure you're here in time for Yisker at 10:45 tomorrow morning. I know there were some different times printed, but we adjusted it slightly based on what happened on Rosh Hashanah, so we moved up a little bit based on timing. After Musaf, at the end of services tomorrow, there will be a walking group that will go. We're estimating approximately 2:30. It'll be a little bit after Musaf ends. And then 4 o'clock, I am doing an open Q&A session in the conference room, so you can come ask me anything, everything, whatever's on your mind, and I will answer it to the best of my abilities, whatever that means. And then we're going to start Mincha at 5 o'clock. Ne'ilah should be right about 6 o'clock. We're going to keep the ark open through Ne'ilah, and anybody who wants to come up and have a private prayer in front of the ark during the service is welcome to do so. And God willing, and with all of God's help, we will conclude at 7:03 with the shofar and breakfast sponsored by the TBE Foundation. Did I miss anything? Did I miss anything? So for those who didn't hear that, I did forget there is another breakout session after my sermon tomorrow morning during Musaf with Nan, who will be doing guided meditation. And during Mincha at 5 o'clock, Tammy and Jonathan will also be leading a conversation as well. So come join. We have lots of educational opportunities, lots of opportunities to pray together, learn together, and be together. So we hope you'll take advantage of all of those. And if you have not already, take a sack outside, generously donated by Ken and Vicki Grodner, the bags, and bring it back. With the food will be donated to Greater Birmingham Ministries and Kolat Jewish Family Services. Anything else while I'm... Excellent. We'll invite Josh to come up one last time as we'll conclude our service with Yigdal, page 250.
Yigdal Elohim chai v'yishtabach nimsa v'yenei tehel mitziuto echad v'yen yachid keyichudo nedlam v'gam ein sof liachduto en lo temut haguf v'yeino guf lo na'aroch elav kedushato kadmon lechol davar asher nivra rishon v'yein reshit lereshito Hino Adon Olam v'chol notzar Yoreh gedulato u'malchuto Shefa nevuato netano el anshe segulato v'tifarto Lo kam beYisrael kemoshe od Navi humalbit et emunato Torah temet natan netlamoel al yad nevio neman beito Lo yachal Lifael v'lo yamir dato leolamim lehezulato tzofeh v'yodea setarenu mabit lesof davar bekadmato Gomer leish chesed kemifalo noten lerashara kerishato yishlach leket yamin meshichenu lifdod mechake ketz yeshuato Meitim Yechayel Berov Chasdo Baruch Adei Ad Shem Tehilato Meitim Yechayel Berov Chasdo Baruch Adei Ad Shem Tehilato. The
Shana Tova Techatemu. May we all be sealed for a good year. And I look forward to davening with y'all in the morning. Gamar Tov. Appreciate it.